again. We're now ready for lecture number 5 in this series of beginnings, the social and cognitive foundations of literacy. I don't know about you, but there's nothing sweeter to me than a young baby, but I think there's nothing more fun than one that's gotten to be about a year and a half, can really cause you some trouble and really do some interesting things. And at this point, that's the age, the general developmental level that we're going to be focusing on. They're becoming really fluent now using the symbols we saw in play, the symbols we saw in the emotional attachment, identification of emotions, and the symbols that we're seeing in emerging communication and language abilities. The learning objectives or the goals for this particular session are to appreciate the early effects that can happen when you have a language delay, and those are effects on continuing learning, so we have to really be wary of those. We're going to also continue to talk about symbolic level play and its relation to developing language. We want to understand and appreciate how play episodes provide further opportunities for language growth. Again, we've got a cycle going. And we want to identify early steps in the growth of language skills. Let's start out quickly reviewing what we've talked about because we've been at this a while now. First of all, we have talked about how social and object exploration experiences have really tuned up sensory and motor abilities that were there at birth. Our children can now actually think in symbols. They can keep the mental representation in their mind. Their short and their long-term memory is really expanding now, and they can remember sequences. They can even soon remember them in the right order. They can remember people. They can remember events. Now, when you get older, you won't know that you could remember these things when you were younger because they weren't yet hooked up with language, but trust me, they are remembering things. They're also getting better at grouping objects and making categories. And now they're all beginning to be able to categorize in one way and then switch to another. These neural pathways that are sending messages through the brain are growing stronger. Messages are sent more efficiently. And we now have really nice pathways that are helping us remember and interconnect all this information we're getting. I want to make, again, the important distinction of the meaning of development. As we've gone through these talks, I've talked about development. This is developing, that is developing. Development is progress that actually occurs through naturally occurring experiences, the things that we can all expect an infant or a toddler to experience day by day. And I'm contrasting that with things that are learned by instruction, by over practice. These approaches may be useful later at some point, but not now. The learning that occurs early on occurs best when it's in natural situations, and it allows that natural interaction between the neural growth and the emerging symbols and cognitive abilities. Again, development is really supported by responsive interactions. Interactions in which attention is paid to what the child is doing, what the child's interests are, how we feed language and even model play behaviors into that. From now on, though, we're going to see increasing evidence of differences among children if they're experiencing language delays, so we need to keep that in mind. If they are at this point becoming further behind in language, we're going to have to probably do something different. How do we know they're behind? We have to start assessing in informal ways, making real note of what they are able to understand and respond to, what they are producing, and see how that changes over time. A delay may not be that important if it's small and if we seem to be making progress over time. But when you see something stabilize, okay, we're going to have to take a closer look. Now I'm going to focus on play again because for this age child, it's a really perfect organizing activity. Along with things that happen in daily routines, free play activities are one of the best places for learning and for acquiring more language abilities. I've got a quote here from some researchers who've done a lot of work on this, and they say babies who are figuring out what people think play imitation games. Babies who are figuring out how we see objects play hide and seek. It's all very serious fun. From 12 to 15 months, we said that we usually get these single representational actions produced in play. That is, babies will pick up and pretend to use an object the way they've used it in real life. By about 18 months, you're getting sequences of these actions. Also, babies begin to have other people engaged in the play. They don't just drink from the cup, they give it to the big sister who's playing with them. Sometimes they'll actually give it to a doll, have the doll take part. You see how they're beginning to see that other people do things like them, other people have their own perspectives, and eventually they will begin to understand that other people have their own attitudes and thoughts, but they're not there yet. By 2 years, though, we see a special kind of play that I call canonically sequenced play. What that really means is that the sequence of play activities are like what could really occur. For example, I saw a little girl once who was playing with her doll, and what she did was pick up the doll, and she said to me, "She's crying, she's crying." And then she said, "Wet." So she put the doll down, and she began to play with the toy, with the little diaper on it. And then, "Not wet," she said, "hungry." She assumed that maybe the baby was hungry, picked up the bottle, fed the baby the bottle, and then held her up to her shoulder and burped her the same way her mother would do, in sequence. Interestingly enough, after that, she decided the baby was wet and went in to change that diaper appropriately, then said, "Sleep," and put the baby down to bed. What she has done here is remember this entire sequence of activities, reproduce it with pretend objects, with pretend activities. And this kind of sequence that is a real-life sequence shows you that you really have advanced symbolic thinking here for a 2-year-old. For one thing, she's planning things in advance. What you will see as play develops is more and more planning in advance. If a child has language, they will tell you in advance what's going to happen. They'll say a word, and then they will do it. On the other hand, as we said previously, if they don't use language yet, you're going to have to watch their actions and see to what degree they want to set everything up before they start on an activity. Probably the next level of play, and I saw it very rarely in my studies of 2-year-olds, was substitution play, where a child will take an object like a block, move it along pretending it's a car. You may know it's a car because they're making car noises, even if they're not at the stage where they would actually tell you what it is. This is very complicated symbolic thinking because they don't just have to retrieve something, they have to learn to, if you will, ignore the quality of what they actually have in front of them and substitute their own mental representation for that. When you see play like this, you can know that you've got a good, solid cognitive foundation for language to develop. When language is developing at a typical rate, you're going to see multi-word, 2-word, 3-word productions at this point. Now, I did a study of play of 2-year-olds some time ago, and I wanted to see whether or not a child's hearing level and or their language level would really associate with the kinds of play we saw from them. And the children who just happened to be in the study were 2 years old. Actually, they were 24 to 28 months old. They had 3 different levels of language, and this included the group that was deaf and the group that was hearing. We called the emerging language level those who produced fewer than 50 words or signs, And this is according to what their parents could report on a checklist. Then we had other children who actually were producing single words, and they tended to be producing more than 50 different words, but they weren't very often combining them. Then we had children who we said had emerging syntax, or the grammar of the language. They tended to have a lot of expressive words, and so the parents said, well, I don't really know if I can remember all of them. But we observed that these children were actually producing their little mini sentences. What happened with this was that the canonically sequenced play, that is, the play that was sequenced and followed realistic order, was only seen with the children who had a lot of words or had so many that they were actually combining those words. We saw not only these sequences, but the planned play occurring with the children who were beginning to produce grammar or syntax with 2 and 3 word, or in some cases 2 and 3 sign, linguistic expressions. The language modality wasn't important. The relationship between language level and play level held whether they were signing or whether they were talking. It also held whether they were deaf, hard of hearing, or with typical hearing. One of the reasons I focused on play in some of my studies is not just because it allows us to assess the cognitive abilities of a child, but it also allows us to look at their social understandings. When they make another object work, when they involve another person in the play, we learn what they expect from people, how they know communication occurs, how they're beginning to think about how those people, or a pretend object, is seeing the world. It's also the richest context for expanding language input, pushing a little bit by adding a little thing new to what the child is currently doing in play or in language. Also, this is one of the things that begins to show you the kind of background knowledge, if you will, the knowledge about how things happen in the world that we said way back in Lecture 1 was very important for being able to understand sentences, paragraphs, connected language in print. So we can already see whether a child's play is very restricted or whether a child's play involves going to see other animals, to the zoo, to the farm, whatever kind of experiences are available in that child's culture. The child's language ability will influence some of the things that happen in play from the other person. When a child's productions are intelligible, when you can understand what they're producing, people tend to then produce more language back to them. And it's important to realize that this becomes bidirectional. As a child's language is restricted compared to age, you actually begin to find adults giving more restricted input to that child. And so a child who has a head start, if you will, is producing more language, is producing sophisticated play at, say, 2 years, will tend to draw more kinds of sophisticated and varied information from the adult who's interacting with them than the child whose language is still delayed. Unfortunately, what that means is that the head start remains ahead. In fact, the difference may even start to grow. Now, we're talking about language a lot. Let's remember that interactions that are responsive, emotional bonds that are secure and positive also are going to influence language, and they're going to influence play and exploration all across this age range. But something else starts happening about this age and beyond is that other children become involved with play. They don't actually play together, but they will play beside each other sometime. They engage in what we call parallel play. This is another way one child begins to see that another child has its own attitudes, its own needs, its own emotions. It's just beginning now, but this is an opportunity for that to start to develop. Language is really moving along now. If you have a typical language environment and everything else is in place, the child has access, that is, the language being produced around him can be received easily. The child will move from single word or sign productions to a word or sign plus a gesture. This seems to be an important intermediate step before they start producing 2 words or 2 signs at a time. It's very often a point is what's going along with the word, and that's an important step to recognize. Vocabulary starts to increase very rapidly. Some children have a sort of flat, if you will, increase, and others, whoa, you'll get a spurt. There have been lots of arguments amongst researchers about whether that spurt always exists or not. But I can tell you, with things I have looked at with children who were deaf or hard of hearing, don't tend to see the spurt. Instead, I've tended to see a more gradual increase in vocabulary size. What else is happening now? Child begins to ask, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? The child is actually generating opportunities to learn labels for things. The first time I looked at young children who were deaf or hard of hearing and had language delays, because this was a long time ago and they had not started getting assistance for language until late, I didn't hear the what's that. I didn't see the sign for what, which back then I was told was this instead of this. And what I noticed later, though, looking back through videos, was that they were pointing with a facial expression that said, I want to know the name of that. So those children, even though their language had not yet progressed, were looking for labels for things and were using their gestures that they already knew how to use to provoke a response from the people around them who had just begun to key into the fact that they couldn't hear. And so they were getting a lot of visual feedback from these people for labels. We were beginning to use signs with them along with speech. The other thing that tends to get responses from people, in addition to intelligibility, is when children do begin to produce 2 words at a time, because for one thing, it's easier to tell what they're talking about, what their intention is. And so what we see is that more advanced language pulls out more advanced models, and so forth and so on. Structures that come out from children at the 2-word or 3-word stage don't seem to be much influenced by the syntax or the grammar of the language that's used with them. Now, I suspect it's going in, but it's not yet coming out. So what you tend to get is a noun plus an action, or an action plus a recipient, the thing that's receiving the action. Early pragmatic functions, that is, the way language is used, tend to be the same across language modalities. Most of them can be expressed through gesture at these early stages, but we're going to talk more about that later. In fact, we're going to talk more about that in our next lecture, and I hope you'll join us for that.